So, palakas ng palakas mga kababayan yung mga panawagan na dapat forthright, meaning immediately, simulan na po ang impeachment trial laban kay Sara Duterte. Gigil na po yung ating mga mamamayan. 73% approve nila. Dapat simulan na ang impeachment trial. Sabi po sa result ng Tanggere. O ngayon, sa latest na mga balita, sabi po ni House Prosecutor, yung House Prosecutor, napakabata pa na abogado, napaka-brilliant lawyer po. One Rider Party List Representative Rods Gutierrez, taga rito sa amin to. Taga Ligaspe, yung kapatid niya, Vice Mayor ngayon. At tumatakbong Vice Mayor, top-notcher pala, no? Top-notcher Councilor, tumatakbong Vice Mayor. Natanong sa possibility, what if si Sara Duterte mag-resign? Ano yung mangyayari? Sabi po ni Congressman Rods Gutierrez, yan ang anyang resignation ni Sara may not save BP from public office disqualification. Talagang tutuldo ka na po, mga kababayan. Kaya tama lang siguro na after election na po ang impeachment trial, kailangan matalo muna yung Team China. Kung ako po tatanungin, tama na rin yung sinabi ni Senate President Chis Escudero after suna na, para sigurado po. Ngayon, busy na yung mga tao, mga atensyon po sa kampanya. O, di ba? Baka hindi masyado mga kababayan matutukan. Kasi, siyempre, yung mga senador, kalahati sa kanila, 12 senators ang seeking for re-election. Yung iba pala, 7 senators man lang yata yung seeking for re-election. Yung iba, tumatakbong local positions. Congressman, tulad po ni Coco Pimentel, tapos ni Villar, at saka ni Nancy Binay. Sabi po ni Gutierrez, the Senate Impeachment Court has the power to bar Vice President Sara Duterte from holding public office even if she eventually steps down from her post before or during the trial. Sabi po ni Gutierrez, itong impeachment has two purposes: to remove from office and to impose penalty of perpetual disqualification of holding a public office. Yun din yung naging pahayag mga kababayan ni Batangas Representative Beatrix Luistro. Dalawaan niya yung prayers namin. Una, matanggal. Pangalawa, ma-disqualify, perpetual disqualification. Wala nang pagkakataon siya na mag-hold pa ng public office, mga kababayan. So, sa paniwala mga kababayan ni Gutierrez, yung resignation niya ni Sara, while it might avoid the first penalty, the second penalty is still there. And I don't think you should take away the power from the Senate Impeachment Court to impose the second penalty just by simple resignation. Pero nilinaw niya, mga kababayan, that the House Prosecution team would leave the decision up to the Senate Impeachment Court if Duterte chose to resign. So the preparation continues. So we are still anticipating even with the resignation. That would depend on the timeline. But we would still prepare for it. Talagang tatapusin na po ng House Prosecution ang political career, mga kababayan ni Sara Duterte. Paniwala kasi ng majority ng ating mga congressmen, unfit si Sara po to hold any public office. Yan ang paniwala po nila. Kaya sabi po ni Gutierrez, if there is a resignation but the impeachment court says tuloy po to proceed, then we will be prepared. If the resignation happens during the trial, we will be prepared. Ito po yung paliwanag ni Gutierrez.
Those are opinions from esteemed legal luminaries and split siguro yung decision on that depending on who to ask. Pero ako personally po, I mean, the fact that I'm here, that I'm working, I'm not campaigning, I am of the opinion po na this is a constitutional duty that cannot wait. Ako po naniniwala na ang mandato po natin dito, what we are elected for, is not to run for a second campaign, but to faithfully fulfill the duties and that we have sworn to uphold and to do within this term. It doesn't matter po kung kung nandito pa rin kami sa 20th Congress, sa 21st Congress, if we don't do the job in the 19th Congress. For as long as nandito po kami, we have to pursue what we are mandated to do. And I think I truly believe that the Constitution, ang ating saligang batas, klaro po yun. Mandato po natin ito. This is not legislative, it is constituent power. And all the more, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the context of that, they were not even talking about the prosecutors po, no? I think the context of that was the Senate Impeachment Court. And it's a continuing body, and there are 12 senators who are not up for re-election. And the 12 senators that are up for re-election, I don't think all of them are for re-election naman po, no? But it's a continuing body and they can still pursue its constituent powers if it chooses to do so. So, sorry, in a roundabout way, ang sinasabi ko lang po, I don't believe that it is sufficient reason po to delay. I think it is a constitutional mandate that has to be complied with immediately po, forthwith.
Nabanggit niyo po kanina, Kong Rog, na general preparations po yung ginagawa niyo. Pero how does the prosecution panel prepare in case hindi pa po mag-umpisa yung impeachment proceedings pero mag-resign na po si VP Duterte?
Not to boil down to academics po, no? Pero there are two schools of thought. We've never reached that point po before. I mean, there was an opportunity before, but they did not pursue it po. I believe that there was a resignation, tapos hindi po na-pursue yung impeachment itself. But ako personally, I believe that the Constitution is clear. The purpose of impeachment is, one, removal from office, and two, the penalty of perpetual disqualification of holding a public office. And I believe resignation, while it might avoid the first penalty, the second penalty is still there po, no? And I don't think you should take away from the power from the Senate Impeachment Court to impose that second penalty just by simple resignation. So I think that's where I personally stand. We leave it, of course, to the wisdom of the Impeachment Court if they will still pursue it. Sorry, and to answer the question, tuloy pa rin ang preparation po, no? So we are still anticipating, even with the resignation, that would depend po the timeline, no? But we would still prepare for it. If there is a resignation, but the impeachment court says tuloy po, then we will be prepared. If the resignation happens during the trial, we will be prepared. Yes po.
Ako, in addition to that, I think the process of the impeachment trial is not tied up with the resignation of a certain official na impeach, di ba? Parang I think it's more of how the Constitution would really would ensure really that if the Congress in this case na impeach si VP Sara, and automatic the Senate would have to really convert itself into impeachment court para mag-decide kung ano yung magiging ruling o ano magiging conviction or anong maka-quit ba siya. So I think it's more of not really tied up with that premise, but it's more on the operation of what the Constitution mandates for Congress to do in terms of impeaching a certain public official.
Kong defensor na nagsimula na ng Division of Labor sa 11 House Prosecutor panel po. Kayo po ba ay meron na rin pong particular na article of impeachment na hahawakan?
I'm not sure po, no, kung anong Division of Labor pa po yung nabanggit ni Kong Defensor, our fellow prosecutor po, no, co-prosecutor. As far as I'm aware, wala pa po akong individual. The preparations in general, although there are talks already at the division, there are leanings already, pero wala pa pong final. So as it stands po, we're still preparing for the whole thing in general kasi we have to be familiar with the whole impeachment complaint. And yung specialization would come later on po. I could be mistaken, baka mas updated po si Kong Defensor, but as far as ako po, as far as I know, wala pa pong specific po.
Pero hindi rin po kayo nagpaabot ng communication dun sa secretariat or kung sino man po yung nagsasabi kung kayong tatanungin anong preferred nyo pong article of impeachment na hahawakan?
There were informal talks already, and in fact, there were already talks about the strong suits of certain prosecutors, which complaints are they most, which articles are they most familiar with. So, to an extent, I think baka yun po yung tinutukoy ni Kong Defensor po.
Inyo, sir. Yes.
Personally, as I've always mentioned, I'm more familiar with Article 2. In confidential funds. I personally want answers. Hindi po na isagot yun. I would it would be my honor to take on that article to ask the questions that were left unanswered during the committee hearings. Yeah. Pero aside from that, any other article, I mean, we're willing to do our duty. Pero if you're going to ask me yun po personally, yung aking panindigan.
O ngayon, doon sa petisyon mga kababayan ng isang abogado for mandamos para forthwith mag-convene na yung Senado, hindi yung pakuya-kuyakoy. may reaction dito si Gutierrez. Pakinggan natin.
Impeachment court immediately.
Two things po, no. I think to clarify, I am optimistic in the I am of the opinion na talagang may kapangyarihan po yung Supreme Court to rule on this. I think it's the proper venue and that it is the remedy that they're looking for, the writ of mandamus po, for example. I think these are things that the Supreme Court will be fully empowered to do po talaga without talking about the merits yet. And the merits, I've already mentioned, sa tingin ko po, may merit naman po yung kaso, may opinion naman po na dapat ito ay mandato ng Senate to tackle the impeachment forthwith. But this is not to supplant po, no, yung maaaring sasabihin ng Supreme Court. I'm optimistic of the chances, but I can't say that for sure gagawin po nila. I'm just saying na they have the power to do it. And I eagerly anticipate po what the Supreme Court will do in this matter. Tama po ba? We're talking about the mandamus po, no? Yeah. So I eagerly anticipate po whether or not it's a favorable or unfavorable decision. Kami po bilang abogado, any decision by the Supreme Court gets added to our precedents po, no? It's added to the law of the land. So at least legally, there will be enlightenment on our part. It will establish precedent for future cases. But I am hopeful po.
May effect po filing ng petition na ito sa paghahanda ng prosecution panel for the impeachment? For example, mas bibilisan po ba yung preparations or any effect po?
As mentioned po, no, we are preparing in general. We're preparing comprehensively. We are preparing for any scenario which includes any alterations to the timeline. As a matter of fact, when we were first elected to the position of prosecution, we were already preparing for a March trial po, no? So we were gearing up for that. Parang sa amin po, ready or not, pass your papers, di ba? So we have to prepare. Now, whether or not this would expedite the case or if by some reason it might even cause a delay, then we will still be prepared po.
Also, it was a representative defensor last Friday na may mga legal eagles who offered their to help doon sa impeachment trial. I wonder lang po kung kasama po dito si Attorney Catalino Generillo Jr.?
Not that I know of. Of course, I'm not in a position yet to disclose, but personally, I'm not familiar po. It's my first time na po hearing the name. Just personal po yan.
Thank you po.